Is real? That depends. If real is what you can feel, smell, taste, and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain. Pikachu, I have in my hand 2 pills. You take the blue pill, and the story ends now. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the Diglett hole goes.
And a big driver is not really like the experts, but like the casual fan. So like there's a lot of basketball players, right, that play very well. And for whatever reason, you see like a lot of prospects, even at their height, you could tell that they probably won't be as good as, let's say, Tyler Hero won't be as good as like Drew Holiday in a sense.
Right.
Like if you are deep into basketball, you already know that. But for whatever reason, Tyler Hero is probably not now, but at the time is like was way more expensive than like a Drew Holiday card. And even though it's like way a higher pop count with Tyler Hero than Drew Holiday. And like, I guess people who are trying to invest and make money, sometimes I guess like if like someone like me who is historic, I guess for me has been like really into sports and know a lot about that sport and a lot about players. It doesn't really work that way when people are trying to, collecting, it doesn't really matter, but if people are trying to like invest or flip, it seems like to have like a negative effect on people.
So in terms of prospecting, the Tyler Hero, I'm not into basketball as I once was, maybe in the 90s and early 2000s. But I do remember the Heat during the bubble. They were doing pretty well with Jimmy Butler, and Tyler Hero was a card that was chased like crazy. And in regards to prospecting, I mean, Tyler Hero, if you just go to another sport, he's not on the level maybe of like a Mike Trout or baseball. If you go to football, Patrick Mahomes, even though he's losing Tyreek Hill. So you just saw in 2020, those cards just went up crazy because obviously we were locked up at home. We had stimulus checks given to many people. So people are just bored at home, couldn't go to games, and they were just throwing their money out there. They're like, oh, Tyler Hero, he's on the Heat. They're in the finals, right? So people were trying to just put all of this money into a card that in a normal situation wouldn't have the demand that it would compared to today. But because the pandemic was such a different environment, they're throwing money at him like he's a phenomenal player. And not to disrespect his skill level, I mean, it just wasn't warranted as his price. So if you look at, you're talking about how people are putting money into cards, I would say it's supply and demand, and just the demand was overstretched at that moment, and now it's coming back to reality, in my opinion.
Yeah. Actually, me thinking about football, like this upcoming football season, and like what people are like putting their money into, is really interesting because like Patrick Mahomes, out of the younger quarterbacks, I guess from drafted from 2017 onward, like Patrick Mahomes has accomplished the most, but he's like the least sought after, which is really interesting. And yeah, I guess he's doesn't have, I guess, Tyreek Hill, and I guess certain people thought he was going to win a few more Super Bowls in this time frame or whatever. But I mean, if you look at the history of football outside of like Tom Brady, there aren't really many quarterbacks have like won back-to-back Super Bowls. So, or even in a short amount of time, is very, very, very rare. Even some of the best ever, like Peyton Manning, he only has 2 Super Bowls. Brett Favre has 1, and these are guys at one point, they were the best quarterback in the league. They were winning MVPs, they were dominant, and they were head and shoulders above the competition. And you can even argue someone like Brett Favre, there's like a golden age they would consider quarterbacks. So it's one of those things where I just would think that by now people will realize that some of these guys that people are buying is just a straight up flip. And it's just like, all right, I just need to undercut everybody else. And I'm just playing this game. And it's almost like flippers selling the flippers. Um, I mean, because I just think you just look at history of like quarterbacks drafted in each 10 years. I did this with basketball too. And like how many of these guys actually become all-time greats. But it's not only how many become all-time greats, it's like how many people really care about. Like a lot of people don't care about Drew Brees like that. A lot of people don't care about Ben Roethlisberger like that. But you can argue they could be in the top 10 depending on what requirements you have.
Yeah, I mean, you get into an interesting topic. Manning had 2 Super Bowls. You had Brett Favre that had one. When I was growing up, it was everyone talked about Troy Aikman, and I think he won what 4 Super Bowls, I believe, if I remember correctly. Yeah, and I remember before the pandemic, I remember selling a card to a guy on OfferUp, and he said that, man, these cards should be worth much more. And I'm like, yeah, it should be worth much more. And then cards during the pandemic, they just boomed up like crazy. They were undervalued, in my opinion, during the pandemic, and now they're they've come back down back to earth to a certain degree, but during the pandemic, it was overstretched. And yeah, like you're talking about in 2020, people are just throwing a ridiculous amount of money into Patrick Mahomes. And I was buying Patrick Mahomes cards. I talked about it. I think I had a 2017 Optic Hollow PSA 10, right? It was $140 at the time. And I sold it for 3,300 bucks or gross or net. So yeah, it was an easy flip. And obviously with Patrick Mahomes on his rookie contract, it made sense for him to have that much success with Andy Reid and obviously Tyreek Hill and just that phenomenal offensive scheme that Reid put together. And now we have prices coming back to normal, or not back to normal. I still think they are overstretched on the high end to a certain degree, but these cards, yeah, it was just a flipper's dream, and now many flippers are trying to figure out, hey, what should I flip next? It's not as easy as it was in 2019, 2020. Everyone was making money. Now you have to be very skillful in flipping. You have to buy up collections, or you have to buy up cards that are just on the cheap.
Yeah,